Welcome to another episode of Technology for Independence with Christopher Cooley. Today, we're going to be looking at autism and ways in which we can communicate ourselves to those individuals. Stay tuned. Welcome back to another episode of Technology for Independence with Christopher Cooley. Christopher, you have a really good guest that has come on who's going to be talking about a variety of different things dealing with autism.
Yes, thank you for having me once again. Yes, I do have Brittany Joseph here with me today, and I invited her to come and talk about her experience as a mother and how she can help be an inspiring to other parents or grandparents or whoever it may be that's struggling with a child or an individual with disabilities of any kind. And Brittany had offered to come and talk to us a little bit about that. And I would like to turn it over to her right now and let her introduce herself and tell us a little bit about herself.
Thank you so much, Chris. It's my pleasure to be here this afternoon to share a little bit about my experience as a mother to a son with autism. Our journey began really when Peyton, my oldest son, who is now 16, when he was about 18 months old. And I noticed in his development that he was just a little bit different than other children his age. He struggled to communicate. He struggled with some behaviors, and we knew that we needed to get him some help. At that time, it was, almost 16 years ago now, it was really difficult to find developmental pediatricians here in Northwest Ohio, where I live, and find support and resources. And so Peyton actually ended up being diagnosed until he was 5 years old. So he was just beginning kindergarten before he got his diagnosis, and was able to receive therapies such as speech therapy, physical therapy, and occupational therapy. Those therapies all helped him become a fluent communicator. He was nonverbal for a period of time, and also helped him with his social skills, and allowed him to be able to attend a public elementary school that he now attends that same high school. So he has become a really interesting young man, really dynamic, and has lots of really neat interests, which I hope I can share with you today.
When I hear the word autism, there seems to be a lot of different definitions out about what it is to be autistic. Can you sort of help me to understand what autism is?
Sure. So autism is considered a disability among those who are neurodiverse. And when I say neurodiverse, that essentially just means that they think differently, they may act differently, may behave differently, communicate differently than others who are not neurodiverse. And the autism definition has taken on several different meanings over the course of time. There were some revisions to the DSM several years ago, and that classified autism as a spectrum disorder. So currently, the correct terminology for autism is autism spectrum disorder. And we refer to that as autism. You may hear others refer to themselves as autistic. And that can be a controversial topic as well because of some individuals prefer person-first language. They want to be referred to by themselves as a person first rather than their disability first. And then others, they feel more comfortable using the term autistic and using a more disability-specific type of language. Yeah, in my son's circumstance, he doesn't have any particular preference, and he is well aware that he has autism, and he's well aware of all of his strengths and all of his differences, and we've really promoted that over the course of his lifetime. And I think that that has certainly helped him kind of come into who he really is as a person.
So with autism, do they grow up and have to have an aide with them all the time, or or they have to be in a home somewhere with someone all the time? How's that like, and what to expect when they grow up? Should we hold on to them, not let them out into the real world? How are they going to communicate? What kind of things will they use to communicate? Can you show us and tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So, Chris, that's a great question. Individuals with autism can go on to lead independent, very productive lives. And so, children with autism do not necessarily need an aide at school with them one-on-one. Remember how I mentioned that autism is a spectrum disorder, and that spectrum can be, severe autism, where that individual needs a lot of additional supports, and that could take the form as an aide, or that could be that they need to live in a group home, or they choose to live in a group home as an adult, and choose not to live independently. But what we see is that a lot of children with autism go on to lead very independent, very productive lives. They're able to work a job. They're able to make friends, maintain those friendships. They're able to, have their own income, take care of their own financial affairs. But that doesn't necessarily mean that everyone is exactly the same and has the same experience. So I always like to use the phrase, if you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism. Autism looks different in every person, and their independent, challenges and triumphs can look different amongst every kid that you meet, every adult that you meet as well. One thing that you may encounter when you're working or meeting someone with autism for the first time is their communication difficulties. And those can range from very mild communication difficulties to very severe. So when I say severe communication difficulties, I'm talking about individuals who are nonverbal. So they're non-speaking. And they may use a communication device, which is a type of assistive technology, which I'm very passionate about. And I enjoy helping support families who are exploring those different types of technologies for the first time. It can also mean something very simple, like they do not understand reciprocal communication when they're in a conversation with someone new. So one example I can provide is if you are an adult with autism and you have a driver's license, you're out driving in the community, and a police officer pulls you over for, let's say, running a yellow or red light. That person with autism will often be incredibly nervous and have a great deal of anxiety, just as we all do when we are pulled over by a police officer. But what happens is they may lose their ability to speak, or they may be nonverbal. And so a police officer will oftentimes think that they're not complying or not understanding their commands, when in fact, it is just a part of their disability, being nonverbal or unable to respond because of their, crippling anxiety, honestly. Here in the state of Ohio, there's actually a law that was passed to allow a designation to be on the driver's license of individuals with autism and other communication delays, so that they can actually signify to police officers when they are pulled over that they do have a communication difficulty, and that the police officer needs to proceed, with some understanding and some support to help that person.
When he was growing up in school, was he treated differently by the other kids, or did they sort of accept him and without putting labels on him?
Yes, absolutely. So he was not labeled, and he was not, singled out in any way. He has a great group of friends that have been attending school with him since kindergarten, and they have become, his his people, his circle, and his circle of support in so many ways. So those same boys and girls that attended kindergarten with him are still in high school with him, sit at the lunch table with him, and certainly understand him and celebrate, all of his differences, just like they have differences, not being neurodiverse. So we were really lucky that he attended a public high school and a public elementary school that was really supportive, had a great deal of resources available so that he could be successful throughout his school career.
How about the teachers? Were the teachers just as supportive?
Yes. So the elementary school teachers were phenomenal, and providing him with support throughout his time in elementary school. He never needed a one-on-one aid. And I felt like that was because his teachers were just so understanding and so supportive of his very unique needs. And that carried on through middle school till about sixth grade. And in sixth grade, he had a group of middle school teachers, and maybe they're watching this, that were not so understanding and not so supportive. And so basically what I did was I went in and had a meeting and with them, with the principal as well. And we kind of sat in a circle and I talked to them about what his specific needs were. And a lot of that was just, extra time to be able to respond to questions, additional support with communication, reminders, visual reminders throughout the day of what the expectations were. Like if there was an assignment, can you write it on the board so that he doesn't forget, or that he can replicate that into his journal so that when he comes home, he doesn't forget that he had an assignment that was due. All of these things are part of what we call executive functioning. And that is one thing that Peyton really does struggle with and has made improvements, but that continues to be something that is very difficult for him and for others with autism. So things like keeping track of time, keeping track of assignments, organizing your day, and planning maybe what's next throughout your schedule can be one of the things that individuals with autism really have a hard time with. And so I was able to support and kind of educate the teachers about who he is and about his unique needs. And I think that we were able to make some real headway. We've never had an issue since. He'll be a junior in high school starting this fall. And I think that those high school teachers have really taken a liking to him, and that is demonstrated in his academic accomplishments as well.
This is a time in which our kids are planning on leaving the house, the home, going off to whatever vocation that they want. What's his plans?
So, when Peyton was first diagnosed, this was a concern of mine and continues to be a concern of mine. What does life look like for individuals with autism and for my own son? Obviously, as a former college professor, my dream was always that he would go to college and go on and live independently in a career and get a career that interests him the most. I believe that he does have an interest in attending college. He has expressed that he wants to attend college far away. So he wants to move out of state and attend a 4-year college or university. And his strength is math. He loves numbers, and he is just a math wizard. So he's expressed interest in the finance field and also the business field. He has a job currently. I know he's only 16, but he has a home-based business where he sells baseball cards and other sports cards on eBay. And he works that business every single day and makes a fair wage selling those baseball cards and those sports cards online to collectors and others. And so I hope that he continues to do that because it really is a unique interest of his and something that he truly loves.
What's one thing, let's say that, the kids are in high school right now, getting ready to graduate maybe next year, and mom and dad are holding on and don't want to let go because nobody will understand my child and nobody will ever understand. I mean, I know because my mom was that way. and I didn't have no one to actually help me to push myself away. I had to push myself away and prove my mom, I can do it. I could do it. Ended up going to New York for Helen Keller National Dinner for the deaf blind. And my mom was so worried. And so therefore, what would you tell these parents today? How not to be afraid, or what to look for?
Oh, absolutely. So I encourage parents, to celebrate their child's independence and encourage them to reach their goals and their dreams. And sometimes that includes, pushing them. Peyton is working on his driver's license and driver's education right now. And he didn't have a real interest initially in getting his driver's license. And so that was one thing that I kind of nudged him on repeatedly about he can have this newfound independence in having a driver's license and being able to drive a car. It's taken him a little bit longer than others to finish driver's education and work on his driver's license. But I think that will open a lot of different doors for him. And so when I am speaking to parents, I would just encourage them to let their kids take risks, let them fail if that happens, and then provide them, with some strategies and supports to be able to build their resilience. I won't be here forever. Unfortunately, parents don't live longer than their children. And so I know that I need to arm him with resources so that he can be independent and take care of himself if for some reason I'm not here to do it. And I think that that's the biggest lesson, is just to remind parents that we don't outlive our children, and we have to have some sort of plan in place so that our children can be cared for after we move on.
But on a general basis, what are some major blocks that autistic individuals have to meet with when they are in the working world?
Sure. That's a really great question, Patrick. So there are a lot of difficulties in the workplace when you are an individual with autism. People don't always understand individuals with autism in terms of their, their unique personalities, maybe even some of their behaviors. A lot of individuals with autism have severe anxiety, and they may also have what we call tics, which are just repeated, repetitive movements. They may also not know how to communicate face-to-face. They may lack eye contact with others. And so they're perceived as being sometimes evasive or not interested in the work. They may also be perceived as, not engaging in the work as well, when it's honestly just a part of who they are and a part of their autism. Imagine meeting someone for the first time and they don't make eye contact with you, or they don't try to carry on a conversation with you. It may be just very simple to the point. And that can be perceived a lot of different ways in the workplace. And a lot of individuals with autism are misunderstood as a result of that. There isn't a lot of education out there about what autism is and the different characteristics of autism. And so I feel like this is a perfect opportunity to also share about, the differences in individuals and the way that they communicate and the way that they interact also in the workplace.
I think what you're saying is very correct, because where most of us know about autism is through movies and TV shows. And usually they have individuals that have a severe problem rather than a mild case, if you want to call it that. And I think we as individuals don't need to put a lot of judgments on individuals, but we, in the back of our mind, think, oh, this person is really good with numbers and can count all the toothpicks that fell on the floor.
You got it. And one common story that I hear from a lot of people that are unfamiliar with autism is the 1980s movie, The Rain Man.
Yep.
And you remember Tom Cruise
Yep.
in that specific film where he was the brother to a
Yep.
man with autism. And that is just one depiction of an individual with autism, but that was one of the very first movies that was ever made, really demonstrating what autism is and what that looks like in an individual. But like I said earlier, when you meet one person with autism, you've only met one person with autism. It looks very differently among different people.
I know it could be scary, you know, you're walking up on someone that may be, you know, moving slowly or moving too fast, or maybe they're just there and it gets all overwhelmed. And then, you know, they just melt down. How should us, in other individuals, if we're there with them, should we move away, push ourselves away? Should we grab them and hold them? What, you know, what would our behavior should be like if we saw that happen?
Yeah, Chris, that's a great question. And I think the first thing to ask yourself is that person in danger, danger of themselves, in danger of others, and is someone close to them with them as well? So usually the person closest to that individual, when I say closest, I'm talking about a parent, a guardian, a caregiver, a friend that understands maybe what the trigger is that's causing them that distress and to have that meltdown is what we commonly call those incidents. But if you notice that a person is just, you know, by themselves, one of the most common things that people will say to someone about to have a meltdown is, calm down, calm down. And ask yourself this question. Have you ever calmed down in the history of being asked to calm down?
Good point.
Because I haven't.
Yes.
I haven't. It doesn't work.
No.
And so instead of asking them to calm down or telling them to calm down or shouting to them to calm down, one strategy is to ask them, would you like a drink of water? Instantly get their mind off of what's going on. Would you like a drink of water? Would you like to go on a walk with me? That oftentimes will help de-escalate whatever is causing that person stress. So giving them an instant drink of water is usually my first go-to. And then let's go on a walk. And as we walk, I say nothing. I say nothing at all. I usually just let the situation diffuse itself. And within 5 minutes, you'd be amazed at how that person that might be feeling like a 10, really explosive in their behavior, de-escalates to what we call a 0 in that walk and in that moment of time.
So iPad, Apple Watches, you know, maybe Android watches, those and communication boards are really good in communications. You see that helpful in a workforce?
Absolutely. Those are all tools that can be used in everyday life. So, for example, an Apple Watch or an Android watch or an iPad that the person can even carry with a shoulder strap everywhere they go can help promote their independence and promote communication with people that may not be familiar with them or have never worked with them or never interacted with them. And that can diffuse those situations where there's miscommunication or misunderstandings. Because oftentimes it happens because the person feels like they're not being understood and they're not able to communicate clearly to those around them. But with technology and communication, it could be something low tech, like what's behind you right now, that communication board that you use, Chris. I love that. It's a perfect example. All the way up to, you know, using technology like an iPad that has those same icons and pictures and words that an individual can use to really communicate what their needs and wants are.
If parents or whoever it may be, if they want to know more or learn more, they're having trouble figuring it out, where would you guide them? What email addresses would you want to offer to allow them to get in contact with you, or maybe someone else you might, or another place you might know?
Oh, absolutely. So what I would do and what I would encourage is reaching out to me through the Ohio Tech Ambassadors Program. There's also a really great resource through the Franklin County Board of Developmental Disabilities, an organization called OCALI, OCALI, and they have awesome resources for training people that have no experience with autism, all the way up to people that have a great deal of experience with autism. So their resources are free, available completely online. And that is a great place to start if you're thinking about learning more about autism and the differences amongst people with autism.
One or two things you'd like to share to the listening audience to sort of sum up what we need to know?
Sure. I encourage you to be patient, kind, and understanding when you are interacting with people with autism. They're just like you and I, really no different. In fact, I think they're more fascinating and more interesting than anyone else that you could be friends with or be a coworker with, or a child that you'll ever meet. And so that would be my biggest piece of advice is don't look and stare and point when you see someone with a disability. Go up, start a conversation, and make a new friend.
And can it be in a relationship?
Absolutely, Chris. I think some of the coolest people on this earth are people with autism. And I think they would make great partners, great parents, great coworkers. And honestly, just some of my very best friends are those that are on the autism spectrum.
We're talking with Chris Cooley and Brittany Joseph. Both of them are Ohio Tech Ambassadors. They're great program. If you have any questions, please direct your questions to them. Chris, Brittany, thank you.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you, Brittany.
Thank you. This is a great opportunity. I appreciate your time.